Welcome to the Anxious Child Podcast, the podcast that helps you best work with anxious kids and teens. Now, here's your host, Stephen Quinlan.
Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. We have a really notable and exciting guest on the show today. Her name is Wendi Friesen, and she is a worldwide leader in hypnotherapy. She's made appearances on Showtime, HBO, Fox, GQ, The Washington Post. The list goes on. In our conversation today, we cover how hypnotherapy can be useful for anxiety, substance use disorder, and how it specifically can work with children. Wendi has an amazing life story of her own to share with us as well. We talk all about how she went from being a flat broke single mother of two with no resources or help to creating this huge enterprise that has helped literally millions of people worldwide. She also bravely shares with us her tragic story of her son and how she's been able to reframe this tragedy into helping more people. At times, it's a very emotional and raw conversation, but it's also packed with many stories of people and kids that she's helped throughout the years and has some wonderful takeaways that anyone can use to better help teens, kids, or even themselves. We're also lucky enough to have Wendi agree to do a bonus hypnotherapy episode, which will be coming out later this week, so you can experience some of these benefits for yourself. I'm super excited to release this episode, but first, a quick word from our awesome sponsors. What are you going to do with all of those cords and wires sprawling all over your house that are making your house feel cluttered and disheveled? Have you ever stepped into a really clean and organized space and just felt how different it made you feel? Your house is supposed to be a sanctuary for you to retreat to at the end of the day, not something that causes you more stress. Mount Genie at mountgenie.com makes clever tech accessories and mounting solutions for your Alexa, Google Home, video game consoles, and all brands of Wi-Fi mesh router networks. They rein in that messy cord clutter in your home or in your office. I have several of their products, actually, and you'd never even know that I had a Wi-Fi router stashed away next to my couch. You can even do things like mount your Google Home display flush with your wall. It looks like it's part of the wall even. It's really cool. Mount Genie also has organizational solutions for your keys, remotes, sunglasses, and more. Most install without tools in minutes and won't cause damage to your walls. Mount Genie is a family-owned company solving your cord clutter problems. Check them out today at mountgenie.com. If you want to be healthier, one of the best things you can possibly do is get at least 7 hours of quality sleep every night. I know it's hard to get that much sleep sometimes. Your mind keeps you awake, you can't get comfortable. There are 100 reasons why you can't get 7 hours quality sleep. But it's super important because your body heals itself when you're asleep. Do you want to know an easy way to get more quality sleep every night? Make sure you're getting enough magnesium. Believe it or not, around 75% of people don't have enough of it. But please don't run to the store to buy the first magnesium supplement you find. Most magnesium supplements use only the two cheapest synthetic forms. And since they're not full spectrum, they won't fix your magnesium deficiency. There are actually 7 unique forms of magnesium, and you must get all of them if you want to experience its calming, sleep-enhancing benefits. That's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough by BioOptimizers. Simply take 2 capsules before you go to bed, and you'll be amazed at how much better you sleep and how much more rested you feel when you wake up. For an exclusive offer from my listeners, go to that's MAG, breakthrough.com/anxiety and use the code anxiety10 during checkout to save 10%. All right, now that we've taken care of business, we'll get right to the interview with me and Wendi Friesen. Enjoy. thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you being here. I'm really excited to hear all about hypnotherapy and how that can be helpful for working with things specifically like anxiety and kids and teens, etc. But before we kind of get into that, I'd love to hear just a little bit about your background and how you got into doing this work.
Yeah, it was 27 years ago, and I had a tanning salon at the time, and it was closing down because the lease was up, and tanning wasn't as popular as it used to be then. So I saw a little ad in the Sacramento Bee, a classified ad that said hypnotherapy school, and just a tiny little ad. And I don't even read that paper ever, but I did that day. And I called them, and they said it starts tonight. It's like 3 nights a week and then 3 full days some of the weeks. Anyway, it's pretty intensive and it's 6 months long. And I said, oh, I couldn't possibly figure out how to do that and come up with money because I was flat broke. I was just in debt and everything. So they said, just come tonight. You can come to the first 3 classes for free. And I did. And what I experienced on that very first night just was so mind blowing. Even though it was really simple, I had never experienced this kind of like learning in this field of study. And then when we did a trance session on all the students at the end, we're all lying on the floor and wow, it was just out of this world. So I stayed and I figured out how to make some money on the side to pay for the classes. And I started seeing clients and miracles were happening. And I thought, I'm so new at this. I hardly know what I'm doing. And people are having these miraculous breakthroughs. So that's what got me started and passionate about it.
Mm. It's so interesting. I have 2 experiences in my own life with hypnosis, which were a little bit a different. One was when I was working in a community mental health center, and one of the other therapists there was trained in hypnotherapy, and I think she had just finished her certification or something. And during one of our meetings, somebody suggested, "Oh, well, do you mind doing that?" And she said, "Okay, sure." And she got us all into this relaxed kind of state, which I felt like I went into pretty quickly because I guess some people are more susceptible than others. Then she did her little suggestion at the end. And this was probably, 10 to 15 years ago. And I still remember what she said. She said, "Can we all go about our day competently and confidently?" And the rest of that day, I was like, gosh, I feel really great. Maybe there's something to that. And then my other experience was the one where you probably hear about this. I'm sure you hear about it all the time, a kind of a mainstream media of what people think hypnotherapy looks like, where we were all sort of on stage and put into this trance. And then by the end, we were in a conga line. So I guess there's 2 different ends of the spectrum there with this.
Yeah. And the misconceptions that people get by watching a stage show, they don't get to find out that it's totally different when you're doing hypnotherapy, that really has no context in actual hypnosis. I mean, people are kind of hypnotized up there. And I've done stage shows, and the ones that are really hypnotizable, like you were mentioning, those are great to have on your stage because they will do the things that you ask. The others tend to play along. And so they're not always hypnotized. They're just like, when you're on stage, you're nervous. You don't know what you should do. Everybody else is doing this. I guess I better do it. And it creates a really fun show, but it is definitely entertainment. But the thing of hypnotherapy that I just love is that even if someone says, oh, I don't think I could be hypnotized, they can, because we all have the same functions in our brain. But sometimes they might avoid even looking into it because they think I couldn't be hypnotized. And really, it's just a deep state of relaxation where your inner chatter isn't in the way. You're not analyzing everything, and you're not thinking about what you're going to make for dinner, or you're so in the moment. You're right in that moment. And then we can deepen it to have you experience things in a much different way. And I think that's why it's so effective, is understanding that it's so much more than like, I can't be hypnotized.
Right. Yeah. Or they're going to turn me into a chicken or something.
You bet.
Right. Is there a connection in that way between sort of meditative states? As somebody who meditates fairly frequently, I thought that maybe had something that made me a little more susceptible as well.
For sure, because your body and your brain in meditation has learned how to go from that beta brainwave to alpha, which is relaxing, and then to theta and maybe sometimes delta, but usually in that theta state. So you know how to let your brain shift into that state. And that makes you much more susceptible and able to get into that state with hypnosis.
What are those states for somebody who's not familiar, alpha and theta, et cetera?
So alpha or beta is our waking state, and we are totally alert and everything. And when we relax and take a few breaths, our brain waves will go into that alpha state, which is relaxing, and it's like calming yourself down. If you're stressed or you had some bad thing just happen, you take those breaths and close your eyes. And then when you get into theta, you're getting into more of a, no, mystical is not really the right word, but the bigger potential for things that you can experience and things that you can change on a deeper level. So I work a lot with drug and alcohol addiction, and the hypnosis things that I do in regard to quitting drinking or quitting drugs. We need to get them into that state so that they're not having a conversation or battling the beliefs that they thought were right from the past, and changing how they believe about their life and addiction, being free of it and in the future. So we really want to get into that theta state.
Okay. And I know you had your own experience with was it your son and addiction and trying to help him get over that? And as someone, myself who's had, certainly I think so many people have addiction touch their life in some way, I'd be really interested in hearing about that. Would you mind sharing that?
Oh, I'm happy to. And the part of the story that's very unfortunate is that my son passed away of an overdose 3 years
Oh,
ago.
so sorry.
Yeah. Whew. It's still hard to say it
Oh, of
even.
course.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
But Sean's purpose was served in his life coming here and being my son.
Mm.
I didn't know anything about drug and alcohol addiction. And as a hypnotherapist, when I was new, I thought there's no way I would use hypnotherapy for drug or alcohol addiction. Look at these rehabs and AA and all these things that they've invented. Well, once I started looking into it and I started talking with other addiction specialists who are non-12 step, and some of them are really higher ups in their field, I realized that there is a way of looking at this from a different perspective. We cannot expect you to quit your alcohol or drugs if you believe that you're always an addict. Holding that belief in your conscious and subconscious mind is very harmful and debilitating, and it makes you weaker. We can't have you believe that it's a disease that you will never get rid of, because you're going to focus on that. And we know if we focus on illness or disease, or we have fears of that, that makes it happen even greater in our body. And then you've got to always keep going to the meetings or you're a dry drunk. And that's not true either. So what I learned with Sean, I put him in 5 different rehabs before I started really developing this program. And the first one he went into, that was $28,000. I wrote him a check. On the last day, when there were several of the men that were going to be leaving in the next couple days, the director told those guys, now remember that in 30 days, only 1 in 12 of you will still be clean and sober. Oh my gosh. The rehab knows that because that is their statistics. But they're telling them that, and that's like hypnosis. They're hypnotizing them in a way to have that expectation. Another place I sent him, the director brought me into his office after about 3 days of Sean being there. And he said, I heard you're a hypnotherapist and we want to have a better success rate. Our success rate is only maybe 5 to 7%.
Yeah.
And I just had written him a check for $33,000. And the fact that they know this in every rehab and they're taking your money should be fraud. So that success rate is the same success rate as someone who doesn't do any program or get any help. It's 5 to 7%. So I did the shortened part of it, but he asked me if I would work with some of the members there. And I did a hypnosis session on about 20 of their people. And they loved it. It just took them into the future where you're no longer even thinking about drugs or alcohol, and you're doing something you love now. And notice what that is and how you feel so strong and proud. And that drug you used to use that's so far in your past, you can't even hardly remember it. It's just not even a thing. And then change the triggers, 30 minutes of that. And then Ryan brought me back in his office and said, what did you do to them? I said, why? Because everybody's talking about you. They're just loving it. They experienced something that they had never experienced before. And he did not bring me into their program because the psychiatrist on their board of directors is like, oh, no way. We're not putting hypnosis in here. No, I wouldn't want to do that. But I just found with every rehab that they were being fed things for their brain to get more susceptible to relapse.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that psychiatrist said that? Like, what? Why would they not want to have hypno? Was it like that same misconception around it, or is it that sort of self-reinforcing model that it's just sort of that revolving door of in and out?
Well, the rehabs that I've talked to and that my son went to, it seems like they're okay with their low success rate. But in this case, I did a presentation for the whole board of directors because this was a big place. They figured out a way to have more than just your 6 maximum limit. They put them all in apartments or in the neighborhood surrounding it. So they had over 100 people at a time for $33,000 a month. Anyway, so the board of directors, everybody loved it except the psychiatrist. So I had a meeting with him, sat down, and he said, there's no way you're going to do this. And he just was absolutely against hypnosis. But the other thing is that I'm a lay person, so I don't have all the letters after my name. And psychiatrists are, they're a little funny about that.
Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm so sorry to hear that about your son. I wasn't aware of that. And it's certainly a tragedy that just keeps happening all too often these days.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear, though, that you are doing this work and trying to help as many people as you can. And when I was doing a little bit of research around hypnotherapy, it was one of the things that I noticed that came up fairly frequently was obviously anxiety, panic attacks, agoraphobia, that kind of stuff. But also substance abuse was definitely a big part of that. Can you tell me about what you feel like? Why do you feel like it works? Like, do you have any sense as to what the curative factors are in hypnotherapy?
Yeah. And there's a few basic principles that really just make it effective. So when you're talking about anxiety, with any condition, but especially anxiety, there is a positive intention or a positive reason that the anxiety is serving in you. If you don't find the positive intention and release and resolve it, it's going to keep coming up. So every time you think, oh, I've got to get a job. I just have to get a job. I don't know what to do, but I can't work because I have so much anxiety. And it every time I try to go get a job, it just, blows up. Well, you're reinforcing that you do have anxiety and you're owning it, but you don't know why it's there. So what we do is we talk to the part of you that produces the anxiety and ask it what it wants. And we say, I understand there's a positive reason behind this. And so now I want you to let that part tell you what it needs and why it needs to have anxiety. And so they give an answer, and then I say, okay, good. Now thank the part. Now even deeper, let that part tell you what it needs. And we do then a third time say even deeper, what does it need? And we're trying to get down to that core positive intention. And then we ask the part, what would it take for you to let go of the anxiety for good and be able to, in this case, go to work and enjoy it and feel good? Generally, that one process will get rid of a pretty big issue that you have. The next thing that's really important, and this kind of combines with that of why it works, is I take someone into the future. And of course, it's an imaginary future, and I'm not telling them what to experience, but I say, walk on that beautiful path into your future. You feel your feet moving beneath you, and you're going to go all the way to 6 months in the future. And now at this moment, 6 months in the future, things have changed. So notice how you feel. Notice what you're doing. And notice what you're really experiencing and what you really love about your life right now. When we do this, we are building memories that, of course, are not real memories, but your brain doesn't care that they're not real and they haven't actually happened yet. your brain stores them, even though they're from this imaginary future, it stores them as if they've already happened. So if they are saying, I've just been feeling really confident and I feel like I can do whatever I want. And it feels like all the weight has been taken off of me. So then we operate from a different set of memories, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and take them a year into the future, have them experience what they're doing. So one of the really cool stories that I love to tell about Ken, he drank over a case of beer a day. He says, everyone who knows me knows I'm just a fat slob drunk. That's all I am. That's all I'll ever be. So he does the hypnotherapy program, not with me, but it was my program that they access online and go through all these sessions. And they do that parts therapy in the future and stuff. And he called me and said, in my future, in 1 year in the future, I saw myself being an athlete and I felt myself like running and working out and all this. He says, that's ridiculous. I'm not an athlete. I'm 45 years old. I'm a fat slob drunk. So here's what happens. He starts training at 45. He just wants it. He became an Ironman. He competed in a bunch of Ironman competitions all over the world and qualified for the Kona Ironman, which is the world champion.
Yeah, in Hawaii there. Yeah, right.
Yeah, to do that, you have to finish a certain whatever in each of these races that you do earlier. You have to complete, I think, 6 of them, which is just ridiculous. He was not an athlete. He even said, I'm not an athlete. I'm a fat slob drunk. And here he is, 20 years of being an athlete.
Wow.
So our brain changes what it's projecting into the future and what it expects, and things change.
As someone who is 46 years old and has done a couple of smaller triathlons, the sprint version, I can relate to that somewhat. It takes some extra willpower when you're, a little bit older. But it sounds so much of what you're saying is that it's like getting rid of these self-limiting beliefs and identities about who you think you are, what you're capable of, and then getting people to imagine these maybe seemingly somewhat out of reach or wild things about themselves, and then just taking away the barriers to that.
Yeah. Because like you say, those limiting beliefs, sometimes we don't even know that we have them. We don't realize that we have something that we learned about ourselves at 9 years old or 5 years old even. And that belief stuck, because when we're young, we do believe that it's true when we're told something about ourselves. And then it reinforces itself with every situation in these events in your life that support that belief. So it becomes stronger and bigger. I know you were talking about kids, and even working with kids, it's amazing how they have these fears that happened from an event that happened. Maybe it was misunderstood, or, especially from abuse and such. But it is quite something how it guides their entire life.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. If you felt like there was anything different about working with kids or with teens versus with adults, along the lines of, as you were talking about earlier, how some people are just more kind of susceptible to going into that trance-like state. I would imagine that children, being in the frame of mind that they are, might be more open to that. Is that generally true?
Yeah. And it's said that kids are in an alpha brainwave most of the time anyway, when they're using their imagination and they're playing and pretending. And so they're kind of in that creative state. And it's very easy to work with kids. And the things that you can change are going to affect everyone in the family. So one of my first child client was 7 years old. His name is Grant, and he was there for bedwetting because he had never had a dry night ever, no matter what they tried. And, that just affects every part of the child's life and where you can go and not go. And so we did the first session, and it was about him getting a machine installed in his brain that was going to monitor that special place in his body that knows how to stay closed tight all night. And we had him explore inside of his body how it works and how that little, thing closes up all tight. And then I had him the next session swimming with a dolphin. It was a baby dolphin that was learning to close its blowhole
That's perfect.
so that the water wouldn't go in or out.
I
And
love
he's
it.
with this dolphin. And that one, I just made it up. It just in my imagination. I thought, blowhole. So then the next day after our second session, he called me. His mom got on the phone. He said, Grant wants to talk to you. And he says, Wendi, this is the best day of my life. Because he was dry for the first time.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. And he did great. He continued to do great. We found in the next session, we found a memory of him getting up to go pee in the middle of the night because his mom would get him up when he was much younger to try to get him to go pee. You know, he was in the bathroom. He's describing this to me. He says, I'm really scared. I'm really scared. And I said, why? He says, there's a spider right there beside the toilet. There's a spider. And I'm so scared of that spider. And his mom didn't even know about that spider thing. But afterwards, after the session, he said, I totally remember that there was a spider. And I was so frightened of going into the bathroom. So we cleared that as well.
So when you find a memory, that makes me think a lot of, again, this sort of, I bring this up because I feel like it's probably something you're up a lot against when talking to people about hypnotherapy and that sort of media portrayal of things. It makes me think of a crime show or something like that, where they use hypnotherapy and they go back and discover this. It really wasn't. I also saw in some of the research that I did that books on hypnotherapy were actually relegated to the witchcraft section of bookstores. Until I think it was 1950. So it was Milton Erickson was kind of the, I guess, sort of founding father of this, who was a well-respected MD himself and had 10,000 case studies or what have you. But up until that point, I mean, it really was. And I think some of that just sort of still carries over now, that there's this sense of that as somehow this magical thing, or that it can do things that maybe it can't do. So maybe you can clear some of that up for people around what are things that it can do to help and what things are sort of misrepresented. That might be a really big question.
It is.
Sorry about that.
My wheels are spinning.
Yeah, well, mine too. I have all these kind of thoughts about it.
Yeah. And it's such a great question, because someone could come to me with some condition, like even a really serious medical condition. I think, I don't think I should be working with that because I don't have the medical expertise to do that. But they've been fed all these pharmaceuticals and nothing's working and things are just not changing. So I believe that if you're a well-trained hypnotherapist, that you go ahead and you work with the mental aspects, the emotional things, the triggers, or something from their past that created that. A woman who came to me for migraines, she had every Thursday a horrendous migraine, and she used to give herself injections, but then those injections quit working. And this migraine was so bad that she couldn't do anything. It was just debilitating. And the doctors had tried everything for 2 years. So I asked her in hypnosis to go back to the first time she felt that feeling that she's having when she has that migraine. And all of a sudden, she's there in the recliner and her face tightened up, and all of a sudden she just wasn't breathing, like her head was rocking back and forth, and she's going, and she really wasn't breathing. And I was like, what do I do here? And so I just said, on the count of 3, when I touch your shoulder, you're going to stay right in that moment, but you'll take a big, deep breath. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And I touched her shoulder and she went, and I said, stay right there in that moment. Tell me what's happening. Let your mind calm down and just tell me what's happening. And she says, my husband has his hands around my throat. He's trying to kill me and he's strangling me. And so, she went through the whole scenario. We went through it again with a different perspective, had her release what was going on in there and the things that were triggering that. And I said, what day of the week is it? And she said, oh, it's Thursday. So every Thursday. Now, after that session, she had no more migraines. They were gone. And so, you're looking at medical issues that maybe you shouldn't be messing with, but if you're really good at what you do, you can perform miraculous medical, not healing, and it's not like a miracle cure. It's just getting them to release the actual cause, the deeper cause.
Do you ever have to, do you find yourself in a situation where you might have to, I don't know, report something like that? Or do you feel like, is that actually what happened? Is her husband was trying to kill her, or is it
Yeah, well,
metaphorical? Or
I think he's in prison, but
Well, okay.
She hadn't been with him for a long time.
Okay.
There are instances where it's really difficult to know. Hypnotherapists are not mandated reporters unless they are
Wow.
also a licensed counselor of some
Gotcha.
sort.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've had, over the years, I've had several doctors that are always willing to talk to me and let them ask questions, and psychiatrists who will let me call them and say, hey, what do I do? This man who's 24 years old, he has schizophrenia. He's been diagnosed, but he wants to do hypnotherapy. Should I do that? Should I not? But it's really nice to have them support me in that. So after 27 years, I've gotten really, really good at deciding that, okay, whatever is going on medically, I want to find out what's going on mentally and emotionally.
What do you think it is about suggestion that is so powerful? I'm thinking about the fact that I remembered that suggestion from so long ago, and that it like trying to dig down to what is it that works? And people will probably say, does it actually work? What's your sense after 27 years about what is it about suggestion that does something, whatever that is?
Well, for instance, when you look at the situation with the woman with migraines, for me to if I were just to put her into hypnosis and give her suggestions that her migraines are going to go away and her body can release the trigger for the migraines, like we don't know what it is. I'm not trying to find a positive intention, or I'm not trying to go back and revivify the memory. The suggestion's not going to work because there's something bigger underneath. So some suggestions could work. If you need to have better study habits and better retention when you read, we could probably do that everything you read is going to be stored in that place in your brain where it's logical, where you remember it and you retain it. And anytime you want to have that memory recalled, if you're taking an exam or you're being tested, and I usually make an anchor, I say, just touch the end of your pen or your pencil. And when you do that, you'll realize that all the information is there. And so a suggestion like that, that would work. But if there's a trauma attached to it that is triggering something else, it may not. And working with kids, some of the things, even though it's early on in their life, they still have these traumas. Like there was a girl who was about 8 years old, and her mom told me, do not say the word math in front of her. She will bust out into tears and sob, and she can't stop. Don't say the
word. Yeah.
But we need to fix this because she's in school, and every time the teacher says something about math, she loses it. So with that, a suggestion wouldn't have worked to say that, you're comfortable about math because math is her trigger word and it's easy for you to do math. That wouldn't have worked. So what we had to do was go to the first time she felt the feeling about things that had to do with addition and subtraction and those things. So she's describing this, that she's in the classroom and they're doing math. And then the bell rings. And I think it was in second grade. Said the bell rang and I'm rushing to go get my coat so we can all go outside for recess. And I'm at the coat rack. And then all these people are rushing at me. And there's these 3 really mean boys that are standing there. And they're laughing at me saying, you don't even know what 1 + 1 + 1 is. You're so stupid. And they're teasing her about being stupid about math. And that was her event that caused this. So giving her suggestions would not have undone the trauma that was trying to protect her from ever feeling that bad or stupid or incapable. We reran the event and had her change it to her being bigger and taller than those boys and saying, not only that, I know what 5 plus 5 plus 5 is. It's 15. I know what 20 plus 20 is. And she's doing this. And then she found a beautiful Pegasus that came down and took her away.
I love it.
So we resolved it in that way that a child could do and neutralize the memory. And then her mom comes to pick her up, and I'm going like, math, we can talk about math. No problem.
Math.
Yeah. So when I was getting like that kind of neutralize the word math, we were making it funny and silly. And she's on this Pegasus, and I say, your Pegasus can even talk. Your Pegasus can say math, changing the way her brain is triggered. So now it's funny and silly.
Mm-hmm. So there's two, it sounds like from what you're saying, there's two different, I'm not sure quite what to call them, tiers or levels, or maybe just even ways that you intervene. One is that suggestion, as we were talking about earlier, which might be for perhaps self-esteem or habit changing or something like that, where you sort of just put that in there while they're in the state. And then the second is maybe a little more deeply ingrained traumas, etc., where you're rewriting that for people into less of a traumatic experience.
Exactly.
Okay. So it makes me think a little bit in terms of that rewriting the trauma response of like an EMDR kind of therapy. Are you familiar with that at all? Where so people go back and sort of putting them in that trance by using the eye movements, etc., and then rewriting that trauma. Is it similar to that?
Yeah, that can help, and that can do some good. It takes a lot of sessions to do EMDR and to get it to neutralize a memory. And you're trying to get the brain to activate something else other than just, the emotions and stuff. And it works, but hypnotherapy is much, much faster and is ultimately less expensive because you're going to just a few sessions rather than 20 or 30.
I mean, this is always a hard question to gauge, but do you have sort of an average length of time that people come to see you for sessions, or is that just really variable?
It is. Well, in an office setting, they come to me for an hour and we talk for the first 15 minutes or so. And the first thing we're wanting to do is set up their expectation of what they're going to experience and how it's going to be. We want their mind to have a really positive expectation. So I'm telling some stories or using some conversational things to help them with that. And then do maybe a 30 to 40-minute hypnosis session and then a little talk after about what to expect next, and have them come in for several sessions. Usually there's very few things that you're going to get resolved in one session. But then I also see clients for addiction. They fly in, they stay in a hotel for 4 days. I come to them every day for 4 days, and we do 3 hours and then take a break for an hour and a half and then 2 more hours.
Wow.
Yeah, for 4 days.
Wow.
It's spectacular what happens for them. Mostly people do this for addiction. So they can take 4 days off pretty easily rather than a month to be in rehab.
Right. So is that primarily what you feel like people come to see you for, is like substance use disorder, addictions, etc.?
Yeah, it has been, because that's one of my real specialties, and I'm really well known for the addiction work that I do. And so people do look to me for that. It's a very contentious sort of field because the people who are AA and 12-step, and just that's the only way. Their eyes are not open to any other possibilities.
It's so difficult because obviously that's something that has been so helpful for so many people, but yet there are these things. First of all, I mean, it's just not for everybody. I mean, some things work for some people and other things work for other people. But there are things inherent in that, such as saying, I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict, that goes right into what you were saying about that, like self-reinforcing prophecy.
So disempowering to you're supposed to start with 90 meetings in 90 days. So now you're going to listen to a lot of really sad stories. I mean, that's, everybody gets up and tells their sad stories, their fears, their mistakes, their relapses. Now, if I were to spend even 15 minutes with you talking about all those sad things, your brain is going to scan for things that are similar emotions and experiences and beliefs. So you're spending time every day, energizing the things, the memories in your brain that match their fear, their hopelessness, their mistakes, their uncertainty, that I'm diseased, I don't think I can do this. And that is the exact opposite of what we should be doing. We would want an addict to have, there's 3 words that I use when I'm kind of wrapping up all the other work that we've done, but it's that if you were to see alcohol in the store or a bar or someone else is drinking it, you're instantly going to know and remember that you are strong, healthy, and in control. Now we've filled each of these words with massive emotions, new beliefs, with experiences from the future. So each of them holds a lot of weight. And now the idea is that you hold these beliefs in a way that you won't be triggered by alcohol, because if you do see it or experience it, you're going to know that you are strong and you're healthy and you're in control. So a client that had quit 30 days earlier with my program was sitting in a bar because he was at a conference and he was drinking club soda.
Good for him.
His friend sits down next to him, didn't know that he had stopped drinking, bought him a glass of his favorite whiskey, waved it under his nose. Wow. Yeah. And so he said, you know, Wendi, when I smelled that whiskey, first thing I knew for sure is that I am strong and healthy and in control. It had an effect, but that effect was to make me feel even stronger. It did not even tempt me in the least. And another woman stopped me in the grocery store in California, and she said, "Oh my God, Wendi, you won't believe this. You helped me stop drinking. I used your program." She says, "Now when I go down the aisle in the grocery store where the liquor is," she says, "I feel like dancing. I just want to dance. I feel so happy because it's not a part of my life." Instead of feeling dread, and AA says, you know, you can't go to a bar, you can't hang out with normies, who are people who drink, you can't be around it, and so on.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite, really, of instead of having, I mean, it's very Pavlovian almost. There's this learned response to something. So the bell is rung, or the alcohol is there, or whatever it is, and you can either go to a place of powerlessness, or what you're saying is really power.
Yeah, because they're told to be powerless, and they have to keep repeating that. And then in your spare time, you hang out with people from the meetings, and that's what they talk about. And, you know, the national success rate, there was a great book that this woman went to, I don't know, like 80 or something rehabs and investigated. I think it's called The Sober Truth. She found out what's going on inside of those rehabs and why there's such a low success rate and why people are failing. And she ended up with a lot of the same information that I have. And it's just amazing that this doesn't change. So there's one rehab center in Southern California. It's called Passages, and it's super luxury. It's $100,000 for a month. Big luxury place, all the yoga, the good foods, the supplements, all the mindfulness stuff, and 12 hypnotherapists. 12 of them that are doing the work to help the clients. And they say their success rate long-term is 94%, which is phenomenal.
Wow.
Makes sense though. So some of their hypnotherapists came and got training from me because they didn't really train them. They just assumed that they would know what to do. And so they would tell me how good it's going, but it's a lot of money. My goodness.
Yeah, that's for sure. I feel like they would be better off if they just went to see a hypnotherapist themselves and made some of those lifestyle changes. But I guess that's, it's part of the challenge too, is that you have to change so many things about the way you're taking care of yourself, even something, diet and exercise and all of those things. That can feel really daunting, I suppose.
Well, there's a woman that came to me for drinking, and this is interesting when we talk about children. Her going back to the first time you felt that or experienced that, or, the feelings you have about that being alcohol. She tells me, this is kind of the short version, of course, that her mother's holding her in a rocking chair and rocking her as a baby. She's like 1.5 or 2, she thinks. And says, my mom just put me down and now I'm crying. I can feel myself crying. And my mom comes back And oh, I can hear that sound that I know. It's the ice cubes tinkling in a glass.
Mm.
Well, as a baby, this didn't mean anything to her, except that when mom picks her back up, her adult brain says, oh, I can smell the alcohol and I can hear that tinkling. She says, and now I'm not crying. So now she's feeling loved again, but the alcohol is connecting with that feeling every time.
Wow. There's
And
that
so we
bell
release
again.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And who would know that you have a memory from childhood that did that to you? And she wants that love of her mother and being held. And
Wow,
yeah.
it's really powerful. Do you ever find that I'm just thinking about like, obviously alcohol and other substances, so much of the time it's a self-medication for other underlying issues, be that anxiety,
Yeah.
depression, what have you. If you take that coping mechanism away from somebody, are there then those other issues, do they sort of come up to the surface and they have to find other ways of dealing with that?
Yeah, well, we work on it together. So it
Uh-huh.
isn't like, we're going to
Yeah,
have
you
you
don't
stop drinking or
throw them
doing
out on the
meth or
street,
something.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
Right.
You
Good
got
luck.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
We want to make sure that we've resolved all of these things that are really deep-seated triggers
Mm.
before we start telling them that they don't need alcohol or they don't need this drug. But doing it in a way that gets to those causes, gets like the positive intention from what you just asked, finding that positive intention. What is it trying to do for you? There's a part of you that is trying to accomplish something, and the only way it knows how to do it is by drinking or
Mhm.
by shooting up or by escaping. So when that part tells us what it needs and we go deeper and deeper into it, we usually can resolve that. And then
Mm.
the need isn't there to medicate.
So interesting. It's so powerful what you're doing in light of what your own experience has been in life and being able to help people who are struggling with, be it substance use disorder or any of these underlying issues, and to be able to give them some of what it is that, or well, I suppose figure out what it is that they were seeking, maybe in
Yeah.
just I don't want to use the word misguided, but something along that, like an erroneous sort of way, that what they were looking for was that maternal love or what have you. So to be able to help people discover that, I think is such a powerful gift that you're giving to others. So I just really appreciate what it is that you're doing, and you're doing a great service, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even know how many people all over the world I've helped because, once you have this recorded program, people
You
share
just
it
put it
with
online
others.
and yeah.
Yeah. But I'm grateful. I'm just grateful that I've got to do this. And, when you were talking about kids, being able to help kids,
Mm.
it just changes a whole family's life. And I have these stories that I recorded for children and they go to sleep with a story and it's kind of hypnotic. But they go on this path with this wizard, and the wizard has the ability to show them something really good about themselves, and they go to this special place where they learn, and the wizard shows them something. So it's different every time because the child is putting the content into the story. And I have gotten the most remarkable testimonials from the parents. And I just want every parent to know that there's something you can do for your child that doesn't require more discipline or, more boundaries or whatever the deal is. So a little kindergarten boy, his dad said he couldn't go in the door to kindergarten. Every day we take him, he just cries and cries and cries. He's just too scared to go to kindergarten. So this had been going on for a while, and they listened to the story with the wizard as he's falling asleep. And he said a few days after listening to it a few times, we go to the kindergarten door, and my son says, "Okay, bye, Dad." And he goes in the door and he says, "Wait a minute, give me a hug." He says, "No, I'm good. I've got this," or whatever.
Mm.
Then the teacher tells him that this little boy started helping other children who were scared in the
Wow.
kindergarten class
Mm. Mm.
just from the story. Oh my gosh.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it.
So parents out there who are listening, it's very easy I have a whole bunch of stories that are different subjects, but this one is the wizard, but there's a bunch for eating problems, disorders, anxiety, worries, fears, and such. And it's so great because the kids can solve their problems by doing this.
I love it how accessible that is now too. So people can just I'll put your website and all that stuff in the show notes, and people can just go there and check out those programs.
Yeah. And there's a link for the kids programs and all the different topics.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much for being here today. I think hopefully we've dispelled some of these myths that surround something like hypnotherapy. I know I've changed a lot of my own perceptions around it just by preparing for this and speaking with you. So I think there's a lot of untapped potential there for people to look into if they haven't done that already.
Yeah, there really is. And, the only warning that I would leave everybody with is there are lots of poorly trained hypnotherapists out there. There are online courses. One of them is $19 that you'll be a certified hypnotherapist. Don't let people like that mess with you. Make sure you know that someone's been doing this a long time, that they're well trained, that they do know what they're doing. And on YouTube, some of the hypnosis things that people have recorded could be really harmful and damaging because they don't know what they're doing. They're just kind of making stuff up to try and get ad revenue.
Right.
So be very careful.
What's a certification that people should look for that's like a well-respected?
Well, we want to see that people are part of different organizations. So like the NGH is the National Guild of Hypnotists. The HypnoThoughts is a big organization that has brilliant people in it, just thousands of brilliant hypnotherapists. There's a lot of them there, but look and see what organizations they're part of, and even look at that, go to that link for that organization and make sure it's an actual one, that it's not just like, oh, you can be a hypnotherapist for $19.
Okay. So anything $19 we stay away from, or potentially $19.95 is probably,
you're good. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't need that. Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. All right. That was Wendi Friesen. Her website is Wendi, that's WENDI.com. She must have got in early to get that name, Wendi.com, where you can check out all the resources that we were talking about today. She also has a YouTube channel and several books on Amazon on hypnosis. Quick reminder, if you're listening to the show and you have any feedback, thoughts, questions, etc., please don't hesitate to get in touch with me, either via the website, theanxiouschildpodcast.com, or on Instagram at theanxiouschildpodcast. And as goes along with some of the themes in this podcast, don't be shy. I would love to hear from you. And that's it for today. So until next time, be well and be in touch.
This podcast is not intended as medical or psychological treatment. In no way should it replace treatment from a mental health professional.